Daniel Defoe's novel Moll Flanders was published in the year 1722. Defoe's narrator opens Moll Flanders as the person who has edited Moll's first person story of her life. He implores the novel's readers to learn something from his story of a woman drawn to crime and to pay attention less to the fabulous tales of misdeeds and felonies and more to the moral of the story. Mole Flanders relates the circumstances of her birth at London's Newgate prison to a woman imprisoned for stealing cloth. She is reared by gypsies until she is 3 years old, when she is transferred to a home run by a woman she refers to as the nurse, who schools Moll in needlework and manners. By the time Moll is 8, she knows that she does not intend to become a servant, even though that is what is expected of her by the town authorities, given her lack of financial means. She decides instead to become a gentlewoman, like a neighbor who seems to earn her living by needlework but is actually a prostitute. Moll's innocence and energy amuse the nurse, and she decides to keep Moll around as her assistant. Moll, because she is pretty and clever, becomes a favorite of the wealthy ladies in town, and they enjoy visiting with her and giving her money for her living expenses. Her needlework is earning her money as well. When Moll is 14, the nurse dies, and Moll is taken in by one of the wealthy women. The two brothers in the new family begin to take notice of her because she is becoming a woman. The elder brother, through flattery, succeeds in getting Moll to sleep with him. He offers to keep her as his mistress and to eventually marry her. They must keep their relationship a secret. Meanwhile, the younger brother Robin makes it clear that he finds Moll very attractive and wishes to marry her. Moll expresses her concern to the elder brother, who says she must accept Robin's attentions. Moll eventually realizes that she is in a bad situation and that to protect her own and the elder brother's reputations, she must marry Robin. The family approves of the match because they are impressed that Moll is reluctant to marry Robin, meaning that she is not a fortune hunter. Moll and Robin live together for 5 years and have two children. Robin dies and the children go to his parents. Moll is left loose upon the world and acts that part of the beautiful young widow, attending parties and living a wild life. Eventually, Moll finds a new husband, the draper, who is a rake and is arrested for his debts. He breaks out of prison and escapes to France. Moll finds herself in a tight situation again, gives herself the name of Mrs. Flanders, and changes her address. She moves in with a woman who gets married soon after, leaving Moll on her own again. Moll, with the help of her former roommate, devises a scheme in which rumors are spread that Moll has a huge fortune. She receives quite a few suitors and is able to choose one based on how much he loves her. After they are married, she reveals that she does not have quite as much money as was rumored, but she is not to blame because she herself never said anything about her finances. Her suitor confesses that his finances are not quite what he had suggested either, and says that to save money they must live at his plantation in Virginia. Moll and her new husband live together for a number of years in Virginia and have three children. Eventually, through discussions with her mother in law, Moll comes to the horrible realization that the woman is her mother, thus making her husband her brother. Moll's mother urges her to cover up the entire affair, but Moll insists that she cannot. The mother promises Moll that she will secretly leave an inheritance for her, separate from her brother husbands if she buries the problem and stays in Virginia. But Moll decides to break the news to him. He attempts suicide and becomes ill at the news, but agrees that she should leave. When Moll arrives in England, she realizes that her cargo has been destroyed and that she is beginning life again with very little money and new possessions. She goes to Bath, thinking that the fashionable resort will be a good place to find a new husband. But the men there only want mistresses. Moll spends platonic time with a gentleman in Bath, a wealthy man whose wife is mentally ill, and eventually accepts money from him. The gentleman becomes quite ill while on a trip away from Bath and asks Mole to come and nurse him back to health, which she does. They stayed together for 2 years in a platonic relationship until a night of much wine, after which Mole becomes his mistress for 6 years. All is well until the gentleman becomes ill again. He escapes death but ends their relationship. Moll is now 42 years old, no longer a young woman. She is interested in finding a husband again. Moll goes to Lancashire and meets with a North Country woman who claims that her brother Jemmy is wealthy and interested in marriage. Jemmy and Moll marry, but they soon discover that, though they do sincerely love one another, neither has any fortune to bring to the marriage. Moll also discovers that Jemmy and the North Country woman are former lovers and had planned this scheme to claim Moll's supposed fortune. Jemmy leaves, but he and Moll promise that they will someday meet up again. Moll returns to London, where she discovers that she is again pregnant. She moves to a house run by a midwife of questionable background. In the meantime, her bank clerk friend is pressurizing her through letters to marry him and offering status reports on his efforts at securing divorce. After she has her baby and finds a home for it, Moll marries the bank clerk. They live a comfortable life for about 5 years, but the bank clerk dies from grief when he loses most of their money. Moll is again out on the street with little money and two children. Moll begins stealing to make a living. She does not know where or how to sell the things she steals, so she visits her old friend, the midwife, whom she also calls the governess. The governess is impressed with Moll's thieving skills and talks her into stealing full time. Moll becomes quite accomplished at stealing and is well known around town for her exploits. She and her partners concoct various schemes, including using a house fire to distract the owners from their property and striking a deal with a customs official over some illegal Flemish lace. Moll always comes out safe, but her accomplices are usually caught and sent to prison or executed. Moll protects her identity even from her partners by disguises and also by changing her name and where she lives. The governess continues encouraging her to steal and is sharing in the plunder. Moll goes to a fair and meets the Baron, who has been drinking too much. They end up stealing together, and Moll steals from him after he passes out. The governess knows the man and develops a scheme whereby he pays for the return of his stolen goods in exchange for her keeping quiet about how they came to be stolen. Moll becomes his mistress for a year, during which time Moll does not steal. After this relationship ends, Moll begins stealing again. She becomes very wealthy thanks to her thievery, but she does not want to stop. She is proud that she is so well known and successful. This is her undoing. She is caught trying to remove some valuable cloth from a home and is sent to Newgate prison. While Moll is at Newgate prison, she hears that Jemmy has been brought in for being a highwayman. Moll is tried and sentenced to death. Both she and the governess repent for their sins. Moll's minister somehow secures a reprieve of her death sentence, and Moll is condemned to transportation. She must board a ship to America and become a slave for 5 years. She contrives a way to meet with Jemmy. He reluctantly agrees that going to America may be better than death and plans to seek a transport sentence as well. The governess, through various dealings with the ship's captain and others, arranges to have Moll and Jemmy sent to America but released from their obligations once there. Moll arranges to have tools and other supplies shipped with them. so that she and Jemmy can set themselves up as plantation owners. Once in America, Moll discovers that her brother, husband, and son are still living nearby. She desires to see them and also to see if her now dead mother has left her any inheritance. But she does not want Jemmy to know anything about her past life. She and Jemmy end up buying a piece of land in southern Maryland. Moll goes to see her brother, husband, and her son in Virginia. She and her son have a joyous reunion, but she learns that her brother husband is ill and nearly deaf. Moll discovers that her mother did leave her a small plantation that produces a yearly income. Moll does not tell her son of Jemmy and does not give Jemmy the entire truth of what she has been doing in Virginia. A year later, Moll returns to Virginia to collect the income on her inherited land, whereupon she learns from her son that her brother husband is dead. She mentions to her son that she may now want to marry again. Ultimately, she lets her son know about Jemmy and gives Jemmy all of the background on her previous life in Virginia. Jemmy is not disturbed and they continue to live well and prosper, returning to England to spend the remainder of their years in sincere penitence for the wicked lives they have lived.